Rain. James Worthington felt the air change before he saw it. Gray clouds gathered on the horizon over the scrubland, far heavier and faster moving than any normal storm. He stood on a deserted highway near Hartfield, watching as a silent caravan of black vehicles funneled into the dust. It was a small town, the kind that bakes itself into the earth under a cruel sun, and yet tonight the sky warred above it, violently pregnant with rain. "Report, huh?" he murmured under his breath. A reporter looking for a story in an insane world. A burgeoning talent like him knew this might define his career. But when the rain began to fall, he realized it might define something far darker. With Harriet's words ringing in his mind, "Not all secrets deserve to sleep in silence," James raised his camera as the first drops fell. He had never seen rain like this. The droplets sizzled on the hot asphalt of the highway, whistling like acid. He shifted behind a gas station canopy and watched as a single drop struck a jackrabbit by the roadside. The animal convulsed and vanished in a green, sizzling smoke. No bones, nothing but a thin wisp. Horror tightened in his gut. A memory stirred. The cracked photograph Harriet had shown him. "I saw it once before," she'd said. "Whole town went to dust. People think it was a freak storm. But I know better. Something cursed us. And it's angry." The wind picked up. A flock of birds angled their flight upward, away from the strange rain. The storm snaked toward the town of Hartfield. James stumbled backward, heart pounding. "Get down," he shouted to a man behind him, a passing motorist stopped by the weather, who now stared transfixed. But there was nowhere to run. As the acidic rain hissed against the station roof, the gas pumps themselves began to corrode. Paint peeled off them like sunburned skin. A sign above the highway burned like paper. James slumped to the ground. He turned to look at the road again. The traveler, an old miner or perhaps a salesman, had vanished. The highway was deserted, just as if no stranger had ever pulled off it. The surface of the road itself began to bubble in sizzling dots where raindrops plinked. This was no normal storm. This was vengeance. He had to survive. Find out what kind of vengeance, why, and how to stop it before it consumed everything he loved. James Worthington was not the type to believe in curses. But sometimes reality forces you to reconsider your beliefs. That morning he had come to Hartfield to interview the mayor. It was after that meeting, especially after the mayor's henchmen began eyeing him suspiciously, that he had followed a newspaper lead to an elderly local historian named Harriet O'Malley. Harriet O'Malley lived in a Victorian cottage 2 blocks from the cracked pavement of Hartfield's Main Street. The outside was decorated with rusty wind chimes and chipped ceramic gnomes, but inside it smelled of old books and polished mahogany. Harriet herself was tall and angular, her graying hair tucked into a bun, glasses perched on a nose dusted with freckles. She wore a long embroidered scarf with folk designs, perhaps Romani, though she was an American through and through. Her large library shelf sagged with dusty volumes and faded newspapers, each one a piece of Hartfield's hidden story. James introduced himself. Harriet regarded him with sharp, dark eyes. "You reported that storm in Harwich," she said quietly, leaning forward. "The acid rain. You saw those pictures." "Yes," James said warily. "People blew it off. But I couldn't explain it. Animals were gone. We found car battery cases melted. I took pictures." A faint smile touched Harriet's lips. "They hoped you'd stay quiet," she said. "But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Are you ready to hear the truth?" James thought of his fiancée lying sick at home, her face smiling up at him in every late-night phone conversation. He had to find the truth, no matter how dangerous, if he wanted to save her, to make sense of this madness threatening to drown their world. "I already have dangerous memories. Tell me," he answered. Harriet nodded and shuffled through old papers, her hushed voice pulling James deeper into a web of history. She told him of Hartfield's neglected archives, how city officials quietly expunged any mention of a place called Dustwood. "A massacre happened there in 1921, Harriet whispered, staring at a faded newspaper clipping. "We erased it from the books. No one even remembers Dustwood exists. But the curse? The curse we could never erase." At her words, James felt the weight of forbidden knowledge press down on him. The story Harriet described was hauntingly cruel. A Romani family, led by a wise and bitter woman named Sara Dănescu, had sought refuge in Dustwood after World War I. Instead of compassion, the small town had answered with fear and suspicion. Blinded by greed for Dustwood's newly discovered oil, and drunk on prejudice, the townsfolk accused Sara of witchcraft. They blamed her for every misfortune, from their withered crops to the sudden sinking of the mine shaft, and demanded her punishment. They killed all of them, Harriet said, slamming a palm on the table. Men, women, children of Sara's clan. Then they built a monument in the town square, a statue of the town's hero, as if to say the massacre was justified. And the pages of history turned as if nothing happened. But Sara did not die. James leaned in. The corners of Harriet's mouth were trembling. She cursed them, Harriet choked. In blood, no less. She vowed they would forget what they'd done, that future generations would pay for their sin. They buried her body in a shallow grave. But a Romani curse, even a dying curse, has roots. And Sara's roots were planted deep in this earth. A wind rattled the windows. Outside, a crow cawed and fluttered away, leaving a black feather on the windowsill. James felt unsettled. So Dustwoods disappeared from maps, buried by shame. But the curse remained, he said softly. And now these rainstorms are it? Retribution, Harriet whispered. The curse is replaying itself in reverse. Now the living towns are dissolving as if the ground never meant to hold them. If the past cannot be acknowledged, the curse will consume the present. James realized what had started happening everywhere. Oil rigs seeping strange fluids that formed storm clouds. Towns left empty overnight. Rings of fog on empty streets where people had vanished. Then he remembered something else. The symbol he had seen spray-painted on an abandoned building in Harwich. It was a circle of intertwined rings, like 3 crescent moons overlapping. He had asked the police about it, and they admitted it was seen at every rain site. Just kids, the officer had claimed, but Harriet's story fit too well. There's something more, isn't there? Harriet continued. Those rings mean something. Some cult, James said softly. A secret society venerating Sara. She became their saint. They think the rain is justice. Yes, a small cult living out near the hills, Harriet said. They call themselves the Order of the Fallen Rose. They believe this is divine, but I tracked some of them. They're excited by the rain, and dangerous if crossed. James's pulse doubled. He wondered if the motorist who vanished earlier was another piece in this puzzle. He glanced at his camera. This is madness, he thought. But if what Harriet said was true, then action was needed. They had to break the curse. As if on cue, the lights flickered. James and Harriet both jumped. Outside, a scream rang out, not human, but shrill and wild. Harriet gasped. Animals, she said. They hear it coming. The animals know. They rushed to the door and stepped out onto the porch. Raccoons and stray cats skittered into the woods. Even a coyote with green eyes turned and slipped away like smoke into the trees. The wind bore a strange sound, a chorus of distant weeping or singing, sad, insistent. Then the whisper. It was so faint at first, James thought he imagined it, but it grew clearer, as if 1,000 lips murmured together. From the silent clouds, a wet sigh. Forget. Remember, dissolve, atonement. It was a message, James realized, a voice crying to be heard. Under the shroud of night, James and Harriet tracked down the Order of the Fallen Rose. Rumors said they met deep in the woods, but Harriet had found an old chapel hidden by pine trees on a forgotten dirt road. It shouldn't still stand, but something about it made the ground stink of damp iron, as though blood lingered in the soil. The air was heavy, charged. James felt eyes on him. Figures in dark cloaks carried torches and chanted as they gathered around a circle of stones. In the center, a woman with long black hair knelt beside a cauldron of burning herbs. Her pale neck was tattooed with intertwined crescents, the very symbol James had seen spray-painted on buildings. She dipped a bead of liquid into the flames with calloused fingers, and it hissed, sending up acrid smoke. The smell hit James like acid in the lungs. The Forgotten Mother grants us this cleansing rain, the woman intoned, voice low and fervent. Tonight we baptize Dustwood with her vengeance. Something snapped in James. "Stop," he yelled, breaking cover. Cult members spun. Torches flared on his stunned face. Harriet pressed a hand against his arm to steady him, but he was already stepping forward. "You don't know what you're doing," James shouted. "This isn't justice, it's killing innocents. The dead suffered enough." Harriet moved behind him as cultists advanced, their whispers rising like a wind. A tall man parted from the back of the circle and stepped forward. He wore a long coat heavy with patches and charms. The leader. Michael Radin. James recognized him from Harriet's description. A scar across his cheek like a path carved by lightning, and eyes that burned with fanaticism. "Killing innocents?" Radin said calmly, each word oozing contempt. "These innocents helped bury our truth. We awakened the past to cleanse the pain they caused. Are you against healing, Worthington?" Harriet's voice was sharp. "He was in Harwich too, took pictures, confronted us. I nearly had him killed." James didn't flinch. "Healing? No. Retribution. Look at them crying in terror," he said, gesturing at the cultists. "This isn't right." As if answered, a thin voice echoed through the trees. The cultists fell silent, heads tilting as if hearing something beyond the world. A strange mist seeped through the forest floor, drifting up around them. The symbols on their robes glowed faintly. The black-haired woman cried out and fell forward onto her hands, eyes rolled back. Michael Radin stepped closer to the kneeling woman, murmuring, "The mother speaks." A moment later, she shrieked and collapsed to her knees, tormented as if receiving a vision. Ghostly cries swelled from everywhere and nowhere. James stiffened as a figure emerged from the mist behind the fallen woman, a tall woman but not alive. Gaunt and pale, with hollow eyes rimmed in shadow, tears of blood on her cheeks. This was Sarah Danescu. James gasped, a hand over his mouth. Harriet clamped a hand on his shoulder. "Shh, listen," she whispered. A thin veil of sorrow surrounded the apparition. Sarah floated above the cauldron, hands passing through reality as if grasping at something unseen. Michael whispered, "You found the bones, the ones we buried so long ago. Why are you still here, Sarah? What more do you want?" Sarah's voice, when it came, was like wind through dead leaves. "Justice. You claimed justice, but you forgot. You forgot their names, their faces. Forgot me. It hurts me. I cry for remembrance. I want them remembered. Every drop of your tears, of my rain, holds a name. For each man, woman, child who begged for mercy beneath dustwood soil." James felt tears prick his eyes. "You told us," he said, voice cracking. He took Harriet's hand. "We're listening now. Let them go. Let me speak for them." Radin laughed, a bitter sound. "This mortal begs for mercy now," he spat. "We gave your remembered people a monument, a safe resting place. You destroyed us, but if this storm clears, you'll never forgive yourself either. Let the heavens burn." The cultists roared. The cauldron crackled, and a ball of flame shot skyward, answering unseen forces in the clouds. It began to rain. James shielded Harriet as they fell to their knees. The first drops hissed on the wooden roof of the chapel like venom. A sudden gust of wind ripped through the clearing, tearing Radin's coat open and revealing beneath it an old leather-bound book tied with a red ribbon. The cultists closed in around James and Harriet, chanting in a language forgotten by most of the world. James's mind raced. The hallucination, Sarah's ghost, had shown him the truth he needed. He seized Harriet's hand tighter. "We have the names," James whispered hoarsely. He saw Harriet's eyes flicker with understanding. He crawled painfully to the broken chapel wall, where old chapel stone lay scattered. With trembling fingers, he fished out a half-burned newspaper page from the debris. It listed names of those massacred in Dustwood. "We remember," James shouted with all the strength his voice had left. "We remember their names: Marisol, Little Pasha, Elena, Michael, Mara, and Sarah Danescu herself. We remember you. We are sorry. You are not forgotten." The cultists glared, confusion breaking through their chants. Radin snarled, "You can't stop what's come. A curse can't be wished away with words." But as James spoke, something changed. A pale glow seemed to rise from him and Harriet, however faint, pushing back the darkness. The chanting of the cultists faltered as a chorus of anguished cries echoed from beneath the earth. Sarah's ghostly face softened, and for the first time, a tear of pure light glinted on her cheek. "The stories, the names, remembered," she whispered, voice distant. Her spectral face cracked as if dust blew away. "I will see you in the clear sky." And then she was gone. In an instant, where Sarah once hovered, only rose petals and silver ash drifted, swirling around James and Harriet before being torn up by a sudden gust of wind. Thunder boomed overhead. Then the heavy clouds that had been the harbinger of acid rain were gone in a flash, revealing a slice of starry night. The pitter-patter of normal rain began, light, warm, refreshing, washing over their upturned faces. The break in the storm felt like coming up for air. James slumped back against the wooden planks of the ruined chapel, exhausted but elated. Harriet knelt beside him, tears in her eyes, hugging him with trembling arms. Around them, the cultists knelt on damp ground, stunned silence replacing their chants. Michael Radin lay prostrate, weeping in the cleansing rain, the red book fallen open beside him. "She's free," he whispered, voice trembling. "Her pain is left, maybe we do too." Thunder rolled gently as the rain continued to fall. James felt the first gentle droplets on his face, soft, warm like redemption. He closed his eyes. All around, the forest came alive again. A raven perched on a branch across the chapel, watching in silence. From the trees, swallows and sparrows returned, circling overhead, singing to the dawn. The earth smelled of wet pine and new beginnings. "You did it," Harriet said softly, still holding his arm. "You saved them." He managed a weak smile. She had tears of relief and joy on her cheeks. James took a deep breath. For the first time, he felt like he was part of a larger story, not just a witness to horror. He thought of his fiancée at home, sick with fever and fear, and felt hope for the first time in days. He was going to survive this. He had to. She would be waiting for him when he got back. He stood slowly, helping Harriet to her feet. Behind him, a faint glow shimmered around the circle of stones where the bones of the past lay in peace at last. Michael Radin rose to his knees, reaching out as if to touch the ground. "Tell us," he croaked, "what must we do now?" Harriet turned to him, compassionate but firm. "You must remember, and you must atone. But knowing it stops the pain. You've heard her, the dead are at peace." Outside, the rain slackened, the moon slipped through the clouds. James looked up, awestruck. The sky was clearing, stars shining as if on cue. Together, he and Harriet stepped out of the chapel into a world washed clean. As they walked back toward civilization, the former members of the cult trailing behind silently, James kept his gaze on the horizon where the clouds peeled away. The curse was broken. The forgotten were finally remembered. The ghosts of Dustwood could finally rest. Harriet nudged him gently as they left the ruins behind. "The story doesn't end here," she said quietly. "We will need to tell it. All of it, so no one forgets again." James gave her a weary but determined smile. "Perhaps," he replied, "but for now, let's just make sure the ghosts can sleep." Harriet chuckled softly, wiping the rain from her glasses. "Amen to that," she said. "Amen," James echoed, feeling rain on his face like absolution. Together, they walked home under a clearing sky, each step lighter than the last, leaving vengeance in the dust, their hearts full of hope, and above all, remembering. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.